Guys, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, and this is our first partnership interview, with multiple owners of an agency kind of in one interview. And I guess, one question that I have is, and you guys have been working together a long time, obviously. What in your experience makes for a strong agency partnership?
I'll take it first.
Yeah.
For me, when we were first looking at this, because we didn't initially start off as an agency, we were just doing web design and some things like that, making cold calls out of my my bedroom when we first started the company. But there were kind of three core components to any real business that I basically identified from working with other small business owners. And really it was one, you had to have someone to control the clients, to work with the clients, to sell the product. Two, you needed a product. And three, you needed to watch the money. So Matt was the product. I was the barking dog. And then the third partner, John, whose name isn't in the company, but is just as vital as both Matt and I. John and I were friends since fifth grade. And, I saw a couple of businesses that I worked for run into money challenges by having what would be, in my opinion, an employee operating the funds of the company, handling cash flow, et cetera. The great thing about having an equal partner, because Matt, John, and I all own equal stakes in the company, sitting in that financial role for me was that every decision he made was a decision that was good for him or bad for him, and it was equally good or bad for me. So being able to have someone in that seat that could be as trusted as any human being can truly be trusted. We can't 100% trust anyone with anything, but there is a level of trust that you can apply to that relationship. And I think that speaks to having that core component, because for me, a lot of agencies have creative, but they don't have someone that knows how to monetize that creative, or you have someone that knows how to get clients, but doesn't know how to judge good creative, which is why there's a lot of, what would be, in my opinion, crappy work out there. So that's I think the key component is having those skill sets that mesh that generally a single person, doesn't have. I don't know if you wanted to add to that, Matt.
Yeah, I think I'll take a different angle on that question, which is more about how we thrive in this partnership. And it's really, honestly, Dan, very similar to what is taught, at least in Western civilization, about marriage. Don't go to bed angry, and listen to each other. Do practice active listening. All three of us have a lot of respect for our individual areas of expertise in this business, and I think what it's done is it's led us to a point of almost, communicating indirectly as to what our responsibilities are. As we got bigger, there was a time where we had to sit down and say, okay, you're really going to watch over this and I'm really going to watch over that. But at the core of our partnership, since Jim and I have been together, it's always been understood. He doesn't question my decisions and what I do, and I certainly don't question his decisions and what he does. And then there's a lot of just opportunity for perspective between the two of us. So we've sort of adapted this way to communicate with one another that, is subtly, almost like we're picking up on the hints of what the other one's feeling, what they're struggling with. And sometimes it's just, hey, man, I don't agree on this. And we have a really good way of kind of working on what we do when we don't agree. The only thing we ever have to agree on, the only thing partners should ever have to agree on, is what you do when you disagree. And that is critical. Jim and I have never, had this intense fight that was so destructive to our partnership. We've always given each other the respect and the bandwidth. We're very different people in a lot of ways, but ultimately, I think we're kind of the yin and yang, and it works really well in our partnership.
Yeah. And with that in mind, in your experience, what should you do when you disagree? Because we talked to lots of agencies that have imploded. I talked to an agency this week where one partner bought the other one out after a lengthy divorce, so to speak. What are some of those hard learned lessons about disagreement?
I think empathy, for me anyways, and this is really also a part of, the cornerstone of how I approach my work, is that, empathy is really a big part of it. It's all right. Can I put myself in this other person's shoes for a minute and look at the world in this way? And then other times, Jim and I just really have a way of letting the other one's passion move you. So whether it's a business decision as critical as firing a client, which, has a ripple effect or could have a ripple effect through our agency for months or years to come.
Which we've done before.
Yeah, which we've done. If one of us is so passionate, I can't do this anymore. I can't function in this environment. We're really good at kind of just, in a weird way, dropping everything and supporting the other. We might hem and haw a little bit, but at the end of the day, it's like, wow, clearly you are far more passionate about this decision than I am, and I'm going to let your gut kind of drive this.
And to kind of, piggyback off that a little bit, tied into that empathy component is also a respect of talent and skill. I think one of the reasons why someone in my seat would go down the path of, oh, I disagree and I want to buy you out, is they may not respect the thing they can't do. I have a pretty deep-seated respect for creative ability. I enjoy jumping into a little bit of myself, but I have no talent, none. I have zero.
That seems to be the recurring theme, is demarcation.
Yeah, it is. That demarcation matters, but also the respect of that demarcation and being invested in the creative person, not their output. Right. So, what does that mean? To me, that means it actually isn't the client that is the ultimate decider for me if work is good. It's actually Matt. If Matt says it's good, it's good. If the client doesn't like it and we need to go down a different route, sure, that sucks. I mean, we need to go down a different route. We need to spend more money. We need to put more effort into it. But I don't turn around and go, gee, Matt, that sucked. Because the client said it sucked. That is not what my investment in creative and my belief in creative is all channeled through Matt's talent and to some degree some of the people he chooses to work with, where Mariella, our art director, there's a good example there. If I know she has seen something from an art direction point of view, I need ask no additional questions.
Sure. To shift gears a little bit kind of on that note, how have you guys thought about long-term planning and growth? Because we've talked a bit, and I know you guys think about it a little bit differently than some agencies that might be trying to take over their respective worlds. So I'd love to hear how you guys have thought about long-term planning.
Well, to kind of piggyback off of what we just talked about, there's a demarcation line there. So I'm going to let the guy that thinks about that the most talk about it.
Yeah, we've grown and we've contracted. And a lot of agencies can't do that because they don't have sound financial planning. That's one of the great things about, again, having a partner that has that financial mind, in that, John's instructions for me were always, I want to be able to suffer multiple body blows. I want to lose half of our business and still have a profitable, functioning company when that dust settles. And that's happened. We've had those levels of losses where our business doubled over the course of a year or two and then immediately contracted. And why that happened was because Matt and I honestly, arrogantly focused on growth far more than we focused on the product itself. And what that meant is, in order to grow, Matt and Jim can't be involved. And I don't mean overly involved, controlling every aspect, but actually involved in the business. We pulled ourselves so far back out and gave so much control to people that had the best intentions, but didn't exactly have the best plan or skill set. But ultimately, that falls on Matt and I. We made the choice. We gave them power. We gave them the control. It's all hangs on us for making that decision. And for a while, it was great. We saw new clients coming on board. We even had a client that Matt and I barely even met. We were there for the initial pitch, and then we never saw them after that. We lost that client after 9 months. Every client that Matt and I do know and are involved with, we've always kept. Unless we decided to fire them, and that's a different story. We have had one client that we have fired for that, and we're still friends with that person, but ultimately it just didn't work out. So as we are moving forward, really it's a check against what is a talent gap for Matt and I. Right now, we're not at a place where we can actually teach someone else to do business our way. And that's really the core of James and Matthew. It is doing things our way. That's what our clients come for. And when we're the guys that pitch the business, we don't have the mentality or the company or the ability to train people so that we pitch it, we hand it off to, the quote B team, and they deliver. Well, we did that and it failed miserably. So much to the point that we completely pulled back from that model now. And we know that our biggest growth limiter for us is going to be Matt and my ability to manage accounts, work within accounts, but use and work with our employees to magnify some of our strengths.
So sorry to cut you off a little bit. I'm just curious. One thing you said that's really interesting was your other partner, John, built the agency in a way to withstand multiple body blows.
Yeah.
That's really interesting to me. And basically this expansion and contraction. Can you go into that a little bit? Like what was he thinking when he was structuring things in a certain way?
Sure. So, when you look at agencies, you constantly see stories of, we lost an account, so we have to fire people, right? Mm-hmm. We have that people are attached to that account. And so one of the things that we looked at is said, all right, how do we ensure that we're not staffing up just to service an account? So over time, instead of allowing, and this has been the story up to when we expanded, and it kind of stopped being the story when we expanded, is that we did not bring on talent just to service an account. Moreover, we would not we would not go into an account and they say, well, we need this, we need that, we'd say, well, no, you don't really need any of that. Here's what you need. Here's what we can do well. If this is for you, we can help. When we started growing, we focused way more on delivering on the ask was actually good service. And that isn't always the case. A lot of times what they're asking for isn't necessarily what they need. So we expanded our service offering, expanded employees, had far more overhead than we probably should have had. But ultimately, it's closely watching your margins, closely watching your production, knowing what it actually takes to produce the work, not having lost leaders, not producing work just because you're trying to keep someone busy. Everything must make money. And ultimately, we have to always be looking at that bottom line and ensuring that the company is consistently generating positive cash flow. And if it's not, making very quick moves to deal with that. I mean, we lost a couple $1 million in business at the beginning of this year. We made lightning fast moves to deal with that reality. And by doing that, we preserved cash flow so much to the point that we still had a very profitable year last year, even though we lost a ton of top line revenue. And I think too many businesses, especially today, focus way too much on top line and realize that the only real number that matters is bottom line, at least in the pond we swim in. Sure, if I was trying to raise investor capital, would I be looking at top line and customer growth? But when it costs you $50 for every $100 you make, I'm not sure how that's a sustainable business model. Moreover, because we have partners in highly core areas of the business, we're ensuring that we never have that talent drain. I'm never going to have to lay off my key creative because it's Matt. We're never going to have to let go of our top account person because it's me. And we're never going to have a hole in how our finances are managed because it's John. The reality is, when you really look at our business, we have a business just with the three partners. And
right. And I think there's often this push to look at top line, even when you know rationally that it doesn't make a lot of sense. There's still all the incentives and all the peacocking is all heading in that direction.
Oh yeah, and we did that. I mean, we played that game. So
one thing I'm curious about. So it sounds like there's a couple different doors that, and one is growth, right? Where you're basically moving fast and breaking things, and you might lose clients and make people unhappy, but you might end up at a station whereby you're helping a lot more people in the medium to long term than if you stayed, with one model of business. And then it sounds like the model you guys have chosen is a little bit more about doing compelling work, not necessarily growing for the sake of staying closely involved in what your clients are doing. And not, offloading as much of the work to people on the team. I guess like one question I have is that how permanent is that decision? Is that sort of like something that you guys have settled on for forever, or is it sort of like we're licking our wounds, or we're going to come back stronger and try this again, in a few years or something?
I think that it's really less about licking wounds and assessing it and going, okay, this is a reality that we face. Success and failure are both the same in the sense that they're possible outcomes. And then it's all about how we decide to kind of frame it in our minds. So losing a client could be a big success. As a matter of fact, for one, we said, wow, this is a huge relief. This is kind of the end of an era of endless torment that we're going through for a small agency. And we love them to death. We're still close friends, but it just wasn't working, professionally. And the first step was to make sure that the foundation of our partnership was sound. So, we looked at it and said, okay, let's essentially sit down and talk about, the core of who we are and why we exist. And we did two things. One was kind of staying in, I guess, my marriage analogy, a kind of a renewal of vows, where it was kind of like, you still want to do this? Yeah, I still want to do this. You still want to do this? Yeah, let's go. And the second was what I called, and for anyone that would be listening that knows anything about kind of the local Boston punk scene, there's an album that just stuck with me, the album title, but I called it an anthology of dead ends. And essentially what I did is I gathered up all of our work that we had done brand wise and or that I loved since 2012. And Jim and I spent an hour or two just kind of watching it in chronological order and saying, these are the things that to me, when we talk about Matt as product, these are the things that represent the heart of what we do. And, you talked about creating compelling work. I think that's one aspect of it, but there's a really big piece that came through for us when we realized that the work that we were looking at, the stuff that was our favorite, also had an incredible impact on either a client's business growth or the client themselves. Some of the things that I made in 2013, people still talk about and ask me when there's going to be a sequel to that. Or, so for us, it was less about, licking wounds. We're both pretty stoic in the face of that type of situation where we look at it and we go, all right, well, there's no path except forward, right? So let's do that. And then it was just more about sitting down and saying, all right, what do we know right now? What do we need and what do we know? We talked to each one of our employees very open and honestly. We told them that in the quest for growth, we lost our way a little bit. And with them, we also discussed, here's what we're doing and here's why we're doing it.
Sure.
And
I think to kind of touch on
Yeah.
your question about will we try again? The answer is yeah, because
yeah, of course.
it's only through we learned a lot from this, and the history of our company is replete with mistakes and growth. That's all we've done is make mistakes, backslide, and grow. Make mistakes, backslide, and grow. This one was especially large, but for me, what's going to define that is my gut feeling, and I have a very specific description for that. It's we had instances during the growth period where the clients that really knew us were telling us we were making the wrong choice, that we were letting them down, that we were abandoning them, like exact words. Honestly, I've never felt like more of a scumbag in my life than looking back at that and saying, why didn't I hear them? Why didn't I listen to this? And really it was, for me, arrogance and hubris, thinking that they didn't know what they were talking about, when in reality, at that point, they almost cared more than I did. And that's something that I'm never going to forget. And I'm always going to be asking that part of me, that like pit of my stomach feeling, would I do this to a friend? And if the answer is no, then I'm not going to do it to grow the business. It's that fundamentally simple. And we will find a way to grow, but I'm not sure how we're going to find a way to grow to a point where Matt does not give the final checkoff on creative, or I do not have a personal relationship with the client.
So
I don't see that.
Sorry to cut you off, but I'm really glad you brought that up, and I think that's a lot of what our audience deals with when trying to scale, which is one of the hardest problems to solve. There's no perfect blueprint for it. So I think that, I appreciate the vulnerability, because I think a lot of people don't go into that very much. So I guess, if this is an experiment, you guys are willing to try again and focusing on growth, roughly speaking, what are the mistakes that you're willing to make? Because you're not going to be able to make everybody happy all the time as you grow. And obviously you want to make your core clients feel like they're cared for and not abandoned. Do you have a sense for the risks that you are willing to take if you guys tried this again? And I think that would be helpful to our listenership.
For me, it's hiring the wrong people. We could easily go down the path of never again. We're never hiring and we have employees now that are fantastic, and we love them. They're the ones that are left. They're also the ones that were in place before the big jump, right? So there's something there. There's something about that matters. And we could easily retract and go, well, we're never gonna find an assistant creative director for Matt. We're never going to find someone to help me with clients beyond Lori, who does that now. And I think that's the risk we're going to have to take, and be comfortable in that failure. The key is not let our clients feel that pain. I'm fine feeling pain. I'm fine losing money. I'm fine making mistakes internally. What I'm never, ever, ever unequivocally fine with is me or our company causing pain to our clients. That is unacceptable. We should always suffer before them. We should lose money before we should lose money if we have to. We should work harder if we have to, because we're choosing to work with them, and we have a responsibility to not have them be in a negative situation because of a choice we've made. And for me, hiring the wrong people is a really dangerous thing, and it's hard to hire the right people.
Right. So on that note, and we've talked about this a little bit before, but how do you decide on the clients that are worth suffering for?
Do I like them as people? That's really it. I mean, and Matt, I mean, I could wax all day long about each of the clients and why I like them. I don't know. I mean, for you creatively, why?
Yes. I have a sizable tuition bill. No, I'm kidding. The truth is, for me, that as a creative person, as a person that has been, doing this, wouldn't say as a creative, everybody's creative, but to be professional requires that you have to reach down inside of yourself and find a way to make something for someone else. And the act of making something for someone else takes a tremendous amount of energy, and it's in a certain sense, it's a very generous thing. And going back to what Jim said, I have to look at our clients as patrons. I have to look at them as benefactors of my ambition, of my vision, and what I want to do. So one of the immediate, things we kind of do is Jim goes into a prospect, talks to them. He has a good sense for me and what I think and how I think. And he'll very blatantly say to them, all right, next I'm going to bring you in with Matt. And a lot of this is going to come down to whether or not A, Matt thinks he can do anything for your business, and B, that you guys get along. Because the best clients we have, and probably will continue to get, are the ones that truly believe and trust in my vision. And the only way to make that happen is if we approach each other kind of on a level of mutual respect. And so I have to be willing to go to the ends of the earth to make this idea work for you. And that means I have to really, really like you. And on the other side, you have to be willing to listen, because especially as a small business owner, my vision is one of many visions. There are zillions of different ways to approach promoting your business or advertising or marketing yourself. But I need you to trust me, and I need you to believe that my way is the best way that I can conjure based on all of the information that I have.
Sure.
So
just to give the devil's due, play devil's advocate, etc. There's lots of frustration at the agency world, that I think is built up since maybe the Mad Men era, right? Where you have, somebody that's a career professional, a marketing leader in a particular industry, whether it's food, beverage, liquor, software, whatever it is. And, they get contacted by an agency, or they get introduced, and they've been in the trenches forever. And then you have somebody that's a creative basically telling them, here's what you should do. I know more than you. I'm a visionary. You're not. And I think sometimes that can be rough. They might resist it out of ego, or they might resist it for good fundamental business reasons. And a lot of the times when we're working with an agency, they have situations where they find out things they didn't know about a particular industry and find out that they were wrong about certain things. So I'd love it if you could go into that a little bit. Like, what happens when you encounter that situation? What are situations where you actually were wrong and it turns out the client was right about things? And how do you negotiate that as somebody that is a creative professional and very good at what
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of listening in my process. I am certainly not the character that's going to show up and say, look, business X, we're new to your industry, but here's how we think we can disrupt it. We do a tremendous amount of listening. We do a tremendous amount of homework. And part of our style, as we went through like that anthology of dead ends that I talked about earlier, one of the big realizations was that we're really not going into a business as agents of change. We're going into a business almost as, like, to stay in the alliteration, agents of amplification, where a lot of times we're looking for this vibe that this company or brand is giving off, and we're just turning it up to 11, cranking it up, and making it. So let me finish, Jim, and then you can kind of speak to that, because you do a lot of the homework stuff, but it's really more like holding up a mirror and saying, okay, this is you now. Are you happy with this? And if they say, you know what, we actually think we are, and we've had a few of those where they think they need an agency. We sit down and talk, and they go, you know what, I think we, based on what you told us, we can do this in-house. and they just run with that. I think that's more of my process. So to answer the question of have I been wrong, I think I've missed the mark when it comes to identifying the core of what a business or a brand or a company or an owner might be about. And that's where the direction immediately changes. Like, okay, well, that's on me. I was reading all these signals that this is you, and it turns out you don't feel that this is you. Let's go back to the drawing board and start over. And that is connected to what Jim talked about clients aren't going to feel that pain if we spend a ton of money on production or we do something and they're like, yeah, it's that doesn't feel like it hits the mark. My first question is going to be, well, can we talk about it? Why? But then after that, it's all right. Let's go back to the start.
Yeah, and we're also most likely going to redo all of it for free. So we're very confident in what we produce, and if we are shown that we did miss the mark on something, we're going to deal with it, and we're most likely going to deal with it out of our own pocket. And the reason why I believe we do nail it, honestly, at the risk of sounding arrogant, almost every damn time we do this is because in the beginning, before we even sign with the client, I have done due diligence on their business and understand the economic drivers behind it so that I can take that information and I can explain that to Matt so that he can see the path to how they make money. Because that's when you're making your clients money, they're not going to really care all that much about really anything else. We have one client who 4 or 5 years ago told Matt to his face that talking about brand and focusing on their brand development just was blowing a lot of smoke up his ass, right? And Matt took a lot of umbrage with that, and I give him credit for not, firing back. That was a good one. 5 years on now, they just experienced their highest level of sales growth. Their average sales since working with us is up almost over 150% from a dollar volume standpoint. Mm-hmm. Their estimate levels are at historic highs. Their sales are at historic highs. And we help them identify parts of their business to bring about new product offerings that helped that in that process. So when Matt talks about that mirror, that is all we're doing on the business end as well. It's like, dude, you have this thing over here, you're dealing really well, and you're not focused on that. Stop worrying about your competitor who's 4 times your size and spends 6 times what you do, because you can't win against them. You can't. You're never going to win. And instead, go where they're not. So it's that intermeshing of business experience and creative. And honestly, I think a lot of agencies have shit when it comes to business experience. They do not actually understand business, like the core tenets of business and how to operate a functioning organization that consistently generates a profit. We look at that first and foremost. And if that isn't there, we're not going to go, oh boy, howdy, it sure be fun to make some really cool and exciting and disruptive TV commercials or Hulu commercials or whatever the case may be. Sure. If it's not going to move product or increase service levels, who cares?
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up. And that's something that when we're doing campaigns to the brand side, we see a lot of, by and large, and the sort of signal we're seeing is, does this agency actually understand our business? And we go on their site and we see a Noah's Ark of different types of businesses represented. I don't believe that they really understand B2B industrial or whatever it is. And you guys have made a strategic decision to not pigeonhole yourselves, to be agnostic and to focus on lots of different industries, which I think makes a lot of sense when you're prioritizing just having variety and doing compelling work and having getting up and doing something completely different every single day, which makes a lot of sense, and I completely respect the decision. But on that hand, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on how you demonstrate trust and how you demonstrate competence in the industry that you don't know to a new client.
It's pretty tough on the creative end.
Yeah, I think that the process of holding up that mirror requires a tremendous amount of investment on our end. So one of the ways that we immediately, like if it's a new industry or new opportunity, we're not shy either with our money or our time to go there. And if that place or that brand or that business is willing, we will take a deep dive. We've spent weeks and a half on site with opportunities just to learn about their business, all the inner workings. We do ask that they open up to us as much as possible, and we talk to key people. We talk to C-level people. We talk to frontline people. We visit locations. We observe. And then we come back together around a whiteboard and we say, what do we see and what do we hear? Because those are often two different things. The brand could tell you that they're all about, the passion of customer service, and you're sitting in a branch or a location and watching someone just blatantly ignore a customer for a good 30 minutes. So we rely a lot on that initial investment. Sure. And then we report back to them and say, look, this is what we're seeing. And this is, I guess this is our diagnosis. We don't really have a prescription yet. This is how we're seeing your business. What are we missing, and what do you think about that?
And we're doing a lot of that work, most of it up front before we even choose to work with them.
Sure.
And that's the investment on our part, because we need to understand their company before we can say, oh yeah, here are the problems. And my issue with working with multiple organizations within given industries is that eventually you're going to start rehashing the same ideas, and you see the same thing over and over and over again. And the reality is we just don't want to do that. And fundamentally, B2B, B2C, all business is really the same. It's human beings transacting with goods and services between one another, and exchanging money in doing so. So when you drill all the way down to a business, that's the core of it. And then you're just putting layers on top of that, how they go about doing that. So all business is really the same at its ultimate core. And if you understand that ultimate core, then you can rely on your own eyes, your own ears, and somewhat the information you hear from clients in the beginning, because they're guarded in the beginning. They're not going to tell you everything. I wouldn't tell everyone everything. I can understand that. But we have to gather that and understand if we can actually help them and do a good job for them. Because, again, our incentive isn't to turn a client and lose them in 1 or 2 years just because we want to help more people. I don't want to do that. I would rather have a business where I have the same 10 clients until I retire, because if I do that, they're growing, they're expanding into new areas. We're helping them to do that. Their company's becoming more profitable. They're hiring people. Their families are being fed. We're growing. It's just this beautiful small business interconnectivity, which is why if Coca-Cola came knocking, we'd probably be like, yeah, we really can't help you, because there's nothing there. I far prefer working with the folks that have equity stake in the business. They own the business, that have real tangible skin in the game, the kind of people that if everything goes south, they lose everything. They lose their hat. Everything is on the line. And I really like that. Those are my favorite clients to work with. And the next level beneath that would be the SVPs of marketing, the marketing managers that truly have autonomy, that don't have a CEO telling them what to do.
Sure.
And
yeah, that makes sense. And I appreciate that. And with the time we have left, one thing that you talked about earlier, Matt, was the anthology of dead ends. You lost a client. It was a kind of the silver lining, reviewing the work, kind of going over the highlight reel and figuring out where the core of the work lives. I'd love to hear both of your thoughts, and maybe this can move to something a little more tactical in terms of what you guys do to kind of proactively get that work in front of the right people, so that you are winning new clients, so that when you lose one, you have somebody else that's in the hopper ready to go, and kind of how you think about, getting the work out there and handling new business and all that stuff.
The old, how do advertising agencies advertise themselves, which
Correct.
we are all notoriously terrible at, aren't we?
That's the reputation.
Yeah. Going back to the process around that, number one, it is just fucking daunting. But we intentionally named the company James and Matthew at the beginning as sort of a tongue-in-cheek poke at the industry, right? It was really, this sounds lame now in 2020, but really at the beginning, it was, instead of this person's last name and this person's last name, we're on a first name basis with our clients, and that's how we're going to approach this.
That does sound lame.
So organically, organically, for us, everything that we do from an approach perspective features Jim and I, or Jim or I. And the reason we do that is because we want people to be in touch with the minds behind the brand. And that's one way to just start establishing trust right off the bat. We had that time of growth, and for us, we kind of stopped marketing ourselves. We kind of stopped talking about our partnership or the minds behind the brand, to the point that at one point, jamesandmatthew.com, you couldn't find the owners. You couldn't find Jim or Matt anywhere on the site. So we as we went through the process of looking at everything, we knew that one of the first steps was to get both of us back into it. Very much in our business, in this industry, agencies have trouble looking at themselves as another client. And that is not just a founder level problem. Employees will say, oh, this is just for the agency brand. Okay, I'm going to kind of put this on the back burner. So it took us a while to kind of, set our intentions both for ourselves and our team that, look, J&M is a client. Yeah. And we need to do work for them just like we do work for everybody else.
There's literally a spot within our client roster that is us.
Yeah.
That if we can handle, and from an execution and media standpoint, what Matt creates, we're pumping out on LinkedIn, backing it with advertising. We run Pandora advertising. We have a Pandora radio ad that Matt sings. Because again, that's putting who we are out there. And if some people are going to be put off by the way Matt sings, and you know what? They probably shouldn't work with us. Just like if you go on our website, there's the picture of me sticking my tongue in Matt's ear. If you don't like that, you're not going to like us. Or if you're bothered by that, you're not going to like us. So we're consistently pumping that out there, going down the route of, Hulu ads, television ads, because the reality is business owners and high-level C-level executives, they're just consumers too. And we can target them and we can get in front of them. The question is, do we believe in our message? And we do. So we'll spend the money to put that out there.
And they're signaling value to that because they're seeing that you're willing to do that and you're able to get out there to a wider audience. So that's definitely believe in that. That makes a lot of sense. Kind of towards the end of this, guys, one cliche question I often ask is what are those trends that you guys are seeing, and it could be in the marketing world or the world at large, that you think people should be paying more attention to?
Matt, you want to take it or should I?
Well, I think for me that there's just too much focus right now, and I think they actually connect. The greater world is there's too much focus on achievement, right? And I think the same applies to the marketing industry. That there are times where the intention of performance outstrips the opportunity to do something truly amazing. I think everybody sets out, especially when you're trying to make money off of an advertising spend, right? Everybody knows that there's a cost per acquisition. Everybody knows that there's a value inherent in that. But where I think that marketers get stuck is, again, going back to my perception of success or failure. It's not just hard numbers that always define that. And when people are focused just on that achievement level kind of performance metric, it's easy to fall into the trap of saying, this is a massive failure and never do this again. And some of our best results have come from sometimes me as the lone warrior of grit, and then sometimes other people hopping on with me to just say, let's stay the course here, guys. This one little project didn't work out, but it doesn't mean that doing this type of thing, forever is going to be a massitive failure.
Yeah, I mean, too much reliance on data and cowardice, in my opinion, wrapped around its use. Data can tell you that something worked. It can sometimes tell you why something worked. What it can't tell you is that something will work. And that's the problem right now, is everyone is looking to cover their ass with data and how is this going to work? How do we know? And by the time you invent that bullshit answer, because that's what it is, the opportunity has passed you by.
Yeah.
So
I live in the past.
Yeah, it's like driving a car looking in the rearview mirror. Data matters, but it matters in a very particular way when you're talking about, did something work? Where did it not? Where did it work, and how can we improve it going forward? But when you have something new, you can't prove it. You have to take a risk.
And also the incentive to make bad assumptions is everywhere, and the number of people that actually understand large amounts of data are precious few.
Everyone's asking for more data, and they're like a drowning man in a pool asking for more water. That's what they are right now. Yeah, I don't even know what to do with it, honestly.
Yeah, we could probably do a whole other episode just ranting about that, because that's one thing that I won't shut up about, is how much of a political ass covering move data now is.
It's gross.
Well, I think, but to your audience and anyone listening, I think the thing for me is that we now are at a point. I won't say critical mass, because I don't think that's quite the right phrase, but we're at a point where data is prevalent. It's everywhere. We can draw conclusions on an ad we ran this afternoon. It's now the agencies that are going to set themselves apart are the ones that are well informed by that, but rely on good old fashioned gut instinct and honestly bravery to push their clients in the direction that they believe in.
Right.
That's really what it comes down to.
That sounds like a great note to finish on, bravery. Guys, how can people get in touch with you, by the way?
Well, they can call me directly, which that's 978-549-6779. That's my cell. So
now that's bravery right there.
It is. Everyone that matters has my cell phone. And anyone that wants to talk to us, I want to talk to them. So, or They can check it out on jamesandmatthew.com.
Awesome. We'll get that linked up to you. I appreciate it, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, take care.
Thanks, Dan.
Bye.